Welcome back to Theopoetics in Glitter, where we examine the 5 womanist building blocks of self-esteem. In episode 1, we explored self-definition through the story of Hagar. In episode 2, we explored divine recognition through the woman at the well. Today, we turn to the 3rd womanist building block of self-esteem, and that's survival and flourishing. So, let's get into it, shall we? This building block recognizes a truth that black women have known for generations. Survival is an achievement, but God desires more than survival. God desires flourishing. Many of us have become experts at making it through difficult seasons. We know how to endure, we know how to persevere, we know how to survive. But survival alone is not the goal. Womanist theology reminds us that God intends for oppressed people not merely to exist, but to have abundant lives. Now, today's guide is Bathsheba, a woman whose story begins in tragedy, but ends in influence, wisdom, and power. Now, the story of Bathsheba, y'all know I am not finna sit up here and read the entire passage of scripture. If you want to read it, you can read 2 Samuel 11 and 12, and then 1 Kings 1 and 2. Now, these are the entire chapters, not the verses. All right, if you want to know the story, but I'm going to tell you the story the way I tell a story. So picture it. It says even in the scripture, at a time when kings go to war. Now, that already tells you that somebody was where they wasn't supposed to be. David was on the rooftop and he seen, that's what I said, seen, S-E-E-N-T, Bathsheba on her rooftop bathing, because it was time for her to observe the cleansing ritual. And we'll just leave it at that. If you want to know more, look it up for yourself. So she was observing the cleansing ritual. Now, let me just give you a little backstory on Bathsheba. She was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Uriah the Hittite was a soldier in the army of the king. He was one of David's soldiers. So, again, at a time when kings go to war, David was on the roof. He saw Bathsheba observing her cleansing ritual, and he said, "Who that is? Go over there and tell it I say come here." Now, here's the thing about that. He was the king. Do you think that Bathsheba had the option to say no? Again, another case where a woman does not have agency over her own body. But I digress. Let's keep it moving. So she complies because he's the king. What else is she supposed to do? So she complies and gets pregnant, because, you know, that's what happens when you have that kind of biblical knowledge of each other, carnal knowledge of each other. It's a byproduct. So what does the king do? The king tries to get her husband to come home and be with her so that he can take responsibility for the pregnancy. Now, y'all do remember that there wasn't no ultrasounds and no DNA testing and all that kind of stuff like that back then. So, you know, that's where that saying, mama's baby, papa's maybe. So that's what David, King David, a man after God's own heart, was counting on, that Bathsheba, that he would come in, Uriah would come in, relate to his wife, and then when the pregnancy was announced, everything would be everything. But Uriah was a man of integrity. And Uriah, even though he came back to the rear, that's what they call it in the army these days, like if some people in the field, other people in the rear, when he came back to the rear, instead of going home and sleeping with his wife, he said, if the rest of the soldiers got to sleep on the ground, that's what I'm going to do too. So I'll just sleep in the outer bailey with the rest of the soldiers. And that's what he did. So Since he couldn't get Uriah to play into his hands, into his game, this is the king now, King David, a man after God's own heart. He told the captain or whoever was in charge of the army, when the battle gets really thick, pull back, but put Uriah in front. So Uriah died. And then the king married the pregnant widow who was carrying his baby. Now there's more to that story, but you got to read it for yourself. I want to get to the point of survival and flourishing. Now, Bathsheba, again, did not have control over her own body. So in order for her to survive, she had to go along and get along. Women did not have any agency during that time. Now we have a modicum of agency. We can kind of control some of our stuff, but back then they didn't. The ability to endure. That's survival. The ability to endure, resist, adapt, and maintain one's humanity in the face of oppression, violence, loss, or systemic injustice. That's survival. That's what we have done, what we have had to do for so long. Now, here's the definition of flourishing: moving beyond mere survival into a life marked by agency, purpose, dignity, growth, wisdom, community, and spiritual wholeness. Spiritual wholeness. Remember that we are not just human beings. We are also spiritual. We are spiritual beings on a human journey, and it is necessary for us to attend to spiritual things. The sacred capacity to recover, rebuild, and continue despite adversity is the definition that we have for resilience. Womanist theologian Dolores S. Williams often described Black women's history as one of survival and quality of life, not merely staying alive, creating meaningful life, building families, building communities, building institutions, building hope. The goal is not to simply survive trauma. The goal is to flourish beyond it. Okay? So, reading Bathsheba a little differently, we realize something about her on the rooftop. We know Bathsheba, hey, sis was looking good because she was out there minding her business. Womanist theology asks us to begin with Bathsheba instead of to begin with what happened to her. Bathsheba is often portrayed as a temptress. But how in the world was she a temptress when she was temptress? I have this thing for pronunciation. You'll get used to it. How was she a temptress when she was minding her own business, first of all, and at a time when kings go to war? David was not where he was supposed to be. Yet the biblical text never says that she seduced him. The text says that David saw her. And I want to pause right here for a minute, because even in this, we can almost see the support of rape culture. In the way that this story is told, this woman was minding her business, observing the cleansing ritual. Do you notice how we always tell women to cover their drinks, to don't wear this or that, make sure you have a whistle, make sure you do this, you have your prep, all this? What are we telling men? What are we telling men? Are we telling men, as in this passage of scripture does, that if you see a beautiful woman, that you have a right, because you're the king, you have a right to take a beautiful woman because she's beautiful? See, Bathsheba had to do what she had to do to survive. Now, if you've listened to any of I'm calling these the foundational episodes, these first 5, because I'm going to talk about other things besides this, but I'm going to talk about it from the lens of these 5 building blocks. And in order for me to talk about it and you to understand what I'm talking about, we got to go over this. So this is what we're talking about. And every one of these so far, this is the 3rd one that I've done. It always talks about the fact that the women in the scripture, sometimes we don't even hear their voices at all. What scripture do we hear Bathsheba's voice in this situation? It's much later. It's much later in the book of Kings when Solomon is born, because Solomon is the child. Actually, Solomon is not the child, because the child that she conceived when the king decided to take her, that child did not survive. So, anywho, David sent for her. David took her. David exercised royal power. The power imbalance matters. Bathsheba had little ability to refuse a king. Womanist scholars invite us to read this narrative as a story involving power, vulnerability, and exploitation. Too often women have been blamed for what powerful men have done. Too often survivors have carried shame that belonged elsewhere. Bathsheba loses control of her body. She loses her husband Uriah. She loses her first child. She experiences profound grief, yet despite devastating losses, her story does not end there. Many people listening today know what it means to experience chapters that they did not choose. Divorce, illness, discrimination, poverty, violence, betrayal, public humiliation. The question becomes, how do we continue after life falls apart? Bathsheba's story begins answering that question. One of the most remarkable aspects, I think, of Bathsheba's story is that she remains. She survives. She grieves, she learns, she adapts, she develops influence. By the time we reach 1 Kings, Bathsheba is no longer a powerless figure. She becomes a political strategist. She understands court dynamics. She advocates for her son. She participates in shaping the future of Israel. Notice what has happened. The woman who was once acted upon becomes a woman who acts. The woman whose voice was absent becomes a woman whose voice matters. The woman who experienced loss becomes a woman helping determine succession and leadership. This is flourishing, not because her pain disappears, not because her pain did not have a say, but her pain did not have the final say. So our ancestors practiced survival and flourishing, obviously. Had they not practiced survival and flourishing, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now about survival and flourishing. This womanist building block is deeply embedded in Black history. Our ancestors survived slavery, but they did more than survive. See, this is why Black joy is revolution. They built families despite family separation. They built churches despite having their ways and rituals outlawed. Despite oppression, they built schools. Despite making it illegal for them to learn, they built businesses. Despite exclusion, they created music and art, literature, scholarship, and culture despite every attempt to erase them. This is flourishing. Flourishing does not mean life is easy. Flourishing means refusing to allow oppression to determine the limits of your humanity. Consider black women throughout history. We have worked, organized, educated, nurtured, resisted, created possibilities for future generations. Like Bathsheba, we have understood that surviving was only the beginning. The lives, the history of black women proclaim that I am more than what has happened to me. The life of Bathsheba says, I am more than what happened to me. The life of Fannie Lou Hamer says, I am more than what happened to me. So what can we learn in this present moment from survival and flourishing? Many people are concerned about the current social climate and the political developments. Worrying about our civil rights, our education, all of that, about the economic uncertainty, the growing hostility toward us. Many people are exhausted and discouraged, right? Many feel afraid. Bathsheba teaches us something important. Resilience is not denial. Resilience is not pretending that everything is fine. Resilience is not toxic positivity. Resilience is telling the truth about the pain while refusing to surrender the hope. Our ancestors faced circumstances that appeared impossible, yet they continued building, continued organizing, continued educating, continued worshiping, continued dreaming. The lesson is not that oppression is acceptable. The lesson is that oppression never gets the final say. Do you hear what I said? Oppression never gets the final say. The womanist building block of survival and flourishing reminds us that our future is larger than our present circumstances. We honor our ancestors not by romanticizing their suffering, but by continuing their commitment to creating life-giving communities. Life-giving communities. That's what we do. When we come together, when we look out for each other, when we uplift each other, when we encourage each other, we breathe life into our common unity, into our community. So, how can we practice survival and flourishing today? How can we use this building block of self-esteem? The first thing that we can do is tell the truth about what we're dealing with. Tell the truth about where we are. Tell the truth about our current situation, our current political situation, our current social situation, our current cultural, medical, economic, all of that. Start with truth. You can't heal what you don't reveal. So we have to be honest about that. And then we have to give ourselves credit for the things that we have survived and the ways in which we thrive. Every time I see my folk getting together, doing a line dance, one of them complicated ones that my left-handed self can't never seem to get, because when they say go left, I always end up going right. I'm confused, but that's a story for another day. But there is a telepathy. There is a telepathy in that thing. There is a way that we communicate with each other without words that is so beautiful. And it is, to me, it is almost like the invisible glue that holds us together, that cements our common unity. And the other thing that we can do is reject shame. Listen, people are always trying to tell us that we have attitudes, that we're loud, that we're this, that, and the other. We can reject that. You don't have to. I want to tell you, I just got a revelation in that moment. I have to pause and I'll get back to what I was going to say, but I made a video I do daily outfit of the day videos. And I made one today and I didn't post it because it showed my belly. But I'm going to post it because I have to reject the shame of having a jiggly belly. And why can't my belly be out in the sun? Why can't, as hot as it is, it's over 100 degrees outside. Why can't I wear a crop top? So I did, and I'm going to post the video. But anyway, reject the shame. Reject the things that people use to try to shame you. When I first started live streaming on TikTok, people used to come in and talk about the texture of my hair. That's when I had long locks. But anyway, talk about the texture of my hair, my tooth that sticks up, all this kind of stuff. And I almost allowed that to stop me from live streaming. But I'm not going to let nobody shame me out of what God called me to do. So here I am. The other thing that you can do is invest in your own growth. Your own growth. Learn, heal, create, dream. Dreaming is so important. Build community. Flourishing does not happen in isolation. It does not happen in isolation. Flourishing does not happen in isolation. Survival does, but flourishing happens in community. So when you learn and you build yourself up and you do all of these things, then you share it. So you go out in the people, among the people with which you share common unity, and just interact and share the things that you've learned and the things that you know and the growth that you have accomplished, and believe that more is possible. Let me tell you, I have a little, I call it my, I don't know what you call it, but it's my millionaire song. And I sing it to Solange's Cranes in the Sky. Please don't sue me, Solange. I ain't got no money. But I sing that frequently because I believe that words have the power to create. And I do that because I want more. And I believe that more is not only possible for me, more is waiting for me. So my rap is, or my song is, I'm a family's first millionaire. They don't believe me, but I don't care. What? My mind is golden, baby, bullion. That's all I need to make these millions. Cause I write, I type, I tap, I click, I spit flames, the flames is thick. You will choke from the smoke if you think I'm a joke, cause I'm about that life. And I'm a millionaire. Anyway, imagine the intro to Solange's Cranes in the Sky, as I'm saying that. Anyway, back to what I'm supposed to be doing. You are not called to merely survive. You are not created just to exist. You are here to thrive, to learn, to grow, to share. You are here to be a part of a community. You are called to grow into the fullness of who God created you to be. So, I would like to encourage you to reflect on a couple of these questions. Like, what have you survived that you rarely acknowledge? Now, I want to tell you something. I'm not even going to start with that, because if I start talking about that, there are too many things that I don't acknowledge that I have survived. There will come a moment when I will sit down and reflect, but as I am still in the process on this journey, I can't do that right now. Anyway, the next question, what have you mistaken survival when? I'm sorry, I always do that because I'm old and I'm reading the questions. When or where? I think when, where? It says, where have you mistaken survival for flourishing? So I can understand that in what areas of your life, but also when, because it could also be, it could be in the area of finances, but it could be in a different period of your life. You see what I'm saying? So it could be where and when to me. But anyway, where have you mistaken survival for flourishing? Now that one I will address. I mistook survival, or rather I mistook survival for flourishing in my second marriage, and I'll leave it alone. What parts of your life still need healing? Now I'm gonna pause right here because on my TikTok I talk about the healing journey. That's what I do on that app. I'm always talking about what I've been through and the ways in which I have healed. Well, not healed. The ways in which I am healing from that. And so I know that the area that I need to work on the most that still needs healing is self-doubt. I second guess myself a lot. Don't get me wrong. I know I'm fabulous. I know I'm capable. I know I'm intelligent. And I know I'm beautiful. But, you know, there are voices from my past that will try to sneak in and remind me that I ain't all that, but I am. But anyway, that's the place that still needs healing for me. What examples from our ancestors inspire you? Now, I love to tell this story because the person who inspires me the most from our ancestors is Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer from Mississippi. I've been to Mississippi before because my first husband's from Mississippi, so I've spent some time down there. And I spent some time down there in the late 80s, between the 80s and 90s. And I can tell you that knowing what I know about Fannie Lou Hamer and knowing what I know about how Mississippi was then, I respect her even more because this is a woman who told the truth, demanded respect, did not feel like she had to code switch or become anybody else. She did her thing and she made a difference in the world. And people still quote Fannie Lou Hamer today, whether they realize it or not. Every time they say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's Fannie Lou Hamer. Okay, so what would flourishing look like in your life right now? That I'm not going to touch, but I will leave that in the air for you. I will leave that in the air for you because you need to know what flourishing would look like for you. And I really want you to reflect on these reflection questions. I am going to eventually link a journal somewhere on this Substack profile so that people will be able to get the journal and these questions and stuff. I think I'll put the questions in the journal and you'll be able to write down what you think, because this is one thing that I know. I am a word nerd, and writing things down helps to clarify them for me and helps me understand them. So somewhere there'll be a journal. But okay, so we wrapping it up now. Bathsheba's story reminds us that resilience is holy. She endured exploitation, she endured grief, she endured unimaginable loss. Think about it. The king summoned her, got her pregnant, killed her husband, married her, and then the baby that she was carrying died. And she lost her husband. She endured exploitation, grief, unimaginable loss, and she remained. She adapted. She grew, and she began to flourish. And perhaps that's the message many of us need today. No matter what's going on in our lives or in the world right now, you are not defined by the worst thing that has ever happened to you. You are not defined by great loss. You are not defined by what others have done to you. You are defined by the God who continues to bring life out of broken places. Like Bathsheba, our ancestors understood that survival is sacred, but flourishing is also sacred. May we honor their legacy by doing more than just surviving, by doing more than just enduring. May we heal, may we grow, may we build, may we flourish, because our resilience is sacred. Our future is possible, and with God's help, our best chapters may still be ahead. Until next time, remember, you survived for a reason. Now give yourself permission to flourish. I'm going to close this the way I close my live streams. Remember to start your healing journey as soon as possible. Now, in order to start your healing journey, you must first acknowledge that there is something from which you need to heal. Once you do that, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And you can do that the same way that you can eat the entire world. And that is one bite at a time. Deuces.